Probably will start. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking out time to participate in this discussion today, an action agenda for private sector in WASH in India. I believe it is very rare to have such a diverse panel having representation from the government, large corporates, SMEs and investors, and of course, a standards organization as well. A warm welcome to you all. Today's keynote speaker is Ms. D. Thara, Joint Secretary and Mission Director, Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, the short form for AMRUT, from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India. Ms. Thara joined the services in 1995 from Gujarat and has taken varied roles in the Gujarat government before joining as the Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs in July 2019. Due to some unavoidable engagement, she could not join us in person today. However, she was kind enough to share with us a pre-recorded message. So can I request Shiba to play her video, please?
Sure. Good afternoon. I welcome all of you for this discussion on action agenda for private sector in water and sanitation. It is very important that the capacities in the private sector are augmented for any mission to succeed, whether it is this mission or Swachh Bharat mission, or for that matter, housing sector, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. If there is no partnership between the public and private, nothing is going to succeed, especially in water and sanitation. So from that angle, it is a very, very relevant topic to discuss. Now, frankly speaking, how much ever money we commit, whatever governance parameters we bring in, if we are able to give that money, but that money is not being able to pick up and translated into outcomes, nothing is going to work. Nothing, it doesn't matter how much money went into the field. From that angle, I feel it is very important to bring in private sector in a big way. Now, private sector is, as in public sector, is also a constricted supply is happening. You don't have many people in private sector who can get added, simply because there are some established norms and situations where only few private sector players have occupied few niche areas. And this has led to a situation that the capacities are getting restricted even in private sector. We may speak, as I'm speaking, I don't think we have more than 10 or 12 companies which can execute STPs very comfortably. I mean, rest of them are trying to come in, but there is always a issue of experience and turnovers and all. So how does AMRUT 2 look at this issue as a challenge? And how does it propose to have a solution? First of all, the AMRUT 2, for first time, we are saying 10% of million plus cities, all the city water action plans, as it would be, 10% should be coming from PPP mode. That's the first thing we say. Second thing we have said is, see, the viability gap funding can be up to 60% of the project in water and sanitation as per Government of India guidelines, out of which 30% can come from central assistance. Another 30% can come from state or UL. So, and in fact, if you look at million plus cities, if they take up projects under AMRUT 2, only 25% is contributed by centers. But if they take up PPP project, 30% is straight away committed for projects. So 30%, 5% more in case you take up PPP. The minimum benchmarking is 10% of the projects. You can go up to even 100% of your swap can be through the state water action plan or city water action plan can be of the million plus cities can be through PPP. Now, where are the situations for PPP? Today, we are talking about AMRUT says 20% water has to be reused. That means you have to treat the water, put it in a proper shape, put it under a proper governance format and sell it to somebody. And that person should be able to pick it up and use it, replacing the existing freshwater demand. That means demand management. So how do you do that? Unless you bring in a partner who is interested in buying a quality water, what is the incentive to maintain the quality in the STP? So linking up this two, say we said, okay, 20% of your water should be reused. The water demand of the state, 20% should be met through reused water at the end of AMRUT 2. Means from now on, you should work towards reusing at least 20% of your treated water. That means at least out of the STPs you do or the TTPs you do, you are looking at tying up water consumers to the treated water through water markets. So you're creating water markets. And it has to be very efficiently done. If you lay a pipeline of a few hundreds of crores and then take it to an industrial cluster, unless there is economies of scale, it won't work. So we'll have to see where are industrial clusters which can take water. So this involves a lot of private sector participation to bring in that synergy of understanding, and then the private sector should buy water from the treated water from the cities. Now, that means it is a mandate. Again, it's a mandate. You have to do it. Now, that means there should be clear governance mechanism put in place, even for the private sector to come in and then use this opportunity, take the untreated water, treat it and sell it to a potential customer. See, we can give a governance framework, we can give support in terms of VGF, but somebody has to step in, and there's a huge opportunity here. I can even publicize, I'm thinking of putting up in the website, all the STP projects which are getting over after we ourselves verify whether it is got over and functionally okay. So that this water, the states can put up for advertisement that this water is available to be sold to the interested consumers. Here, the private sector can step in and manage that. Already the asset is there, the water is coming out. Now, there could be a company which can aggregate the demand and bring in economies of scale to bring in aggregated investments into pipeline infrastructure or delivery infrastructure or managing it smartly. So all this could be very big opportunities. Now, we are focusing on ensuring that 100% of the water in 500 cities get treated. Now, how do you ensure that this treated water, the untreated water doesn't enter the water streams? 100% means what we are talking about. It could be a septic tank, then the fecal sludge has to be treated, and then this has to be beneficially used. So again, a private sector can put up a biogas plant, methane plant. You can bring in a situation of sludge dewatering and selling it, because if you can detoxify the sludge in terms of its biological harmful biological content, nothing better than that could be a manure. Everybody knows this. Irradiation plant is one way of doing it, but there could be other ways also. So I am looking at a situation where sludge is a big opportunity provided, but you can package it with, remove the harmful bacteria, package it with new useful bacteria and package and sell it to the farmers. And sludge is a very fast moving manure today. It is better than even your farmyard manure. This is very well understood. But you have to be careful. There are no heavy metals beyond the tolerance point. So this is another area which can have good traction. The third aspect which we should look at is, how do you bring in monitoring? See, for example, if you can bring in efficiency and reduce the cost, then that cost can repay your investment through time, ESCO model. But that is energy saving cost model. But here I am talking about a ESCO model in operations itself. Like you say that today, if we can bring in private sector and say, okay, study our system and tell us where our water is going waste and how we can increase supply to 1,000 more houses in the same infrastructure. How do we do that? That is third angle which we can bring in. Look at the existing infrastructure, what it is doing, and how can our overall private structure come in and look at that in a holistic manner. That is again an opportunity for the cities to look at maximizing their outcomes through minimal infrastructure. So this is another area which we should kickstart engagement with the private sector. The fourth thing we are looking at is how do you use smart monitoring? Smart monitoring essentially will help in what I said. If you have smart monitoring, you exactly know where the issues lie. Therefore, you can actually make it efficient. And therefore, there's so much life cycle cost and operational cost which can come down because of smart monitoring. So this is another issue which is, and that will bring in a lot of human capital focused on this. If you put in smart monitoring, in fact, they'll be focused on quality, quantity and all, so that the water becomes cleaner and cleaner day by day. So that is another angle which we have said that every project will have smart elements to automation, for automation and monitoring the quality and quantity and accessibility. So all these are part of AMRUT 2 projects. Now, third, another thing, as I told you, how does the private sector is invited? As I told you, first thing is 10% of, minimum 10%, anything could be there. Minimum 10% of million plus cities swap has to come from state water action plan in million cities has to come from PPP mode. Another thing which we are looking at is the PPP mode with 30% viability gap funding there, which is a very huge thing. At the same time, we are looking at PPP mode in say rainwater harvesting, rejuvenation of wells, bringing up. But then here there is a requirement of sort of policy enablers at the state level also when you do that, when you want a body to be rejuvenated by a private party. But the ideal area to enter is if you can get a little bit of water, fresh water also. I think we need to have fresh water also in the private sector, but more so the used water, which can become a resource and get treated. For example, developing an app and bringing in where is the water available, treated water, and what is its quality. So somebody can procure that water. If they procure that water, you incentivize that behavior by giving a rebate in the tax. Or you incentivize that behavior by giving, say, some other benefit, like, a little more built up space for that person because he's bringing in that value to the city. So this is very, very important. How do you pay them doesn't matter. You will create a lot of savings. But how do you ensure that there is information available on one platform for the demand, from the demand side and supply side? Therefore, they can meet and talk and reuse the water which is being created. So I think this is what we are looking at as a most important value addition in terms of private sector coming into the AMRUT 2. However, I would say beyond all that, private sector is what is going to execute all the projects through contracts. So there has to be capacity building. Today, the way the skilled and non-skilled workers and semi-skilled workers work on the field, how they put their manholes, again, build the manholes, or manholes, I won't call it machine holes. So these machine holes, that is the manholes, the new name is machine. We don't want to have manholes where men get into it. Most of it should be machine. And that machine holes, today you can construct it with so much of imperfection. And there are now precast machine holes which are coming, which are HDPE, which are, so these bring in a lot of standardization. And also today, I can give it to any contractor. Now the contractors have not got into the habit of doing it quickly. But of course, there are many issues and surrounding that issue. So how do we look at contractors' capacity building so that they can deliver things in time? So these are some of the challenges which we are looking at from the, how do you address them in AMRUT 2, that we get a lot more capacity building in the private sector. This time AMRUT 2 acknowledges that capacity building in private sector is 100% required compared to public sector. This is all I wanted to say. Thank you so much. I think there's a huge, and one more thing which we want to inform you, we are going to come up with a water platform, India water platform, where all the stakeholders from manufacturer of pipes, taps, manholes, precasts, and labor contractors, they can be on one platform. This is our goal. And we are also coming up with an app called Amrutam, where water connections will have to be entered by the contractors who give it, so that is eligible for both verification and funding. Thank you so much. It's going to be a lot of interaction between the contractor and the government now, henceforth, and private sector and the government, to enhance and bring in that transparency and bring in that synergy so that we execute projects in time and we give outcomes as desired. Thank you.
It's really heartening to hear Ms. Thara talking about the private sector involvement, especially in treating the sludge, in reuse of water, treating the water and reuse of the water. and also the capacity building, smart monitoring. It sounds like music to the TBC participants and TBC partners. Now let's quickly walk you through the TBC's impact in the last 5 years. Venu, over to you.
Thank you, Sunil. So we've been in these, our vision of the sanitation economy started, this movement started in 2016 with the Accelerator program, which sought to showcase evidence that business models are possible in sanitation. So far, we've supported 6 cohorts, which include about 45 sanitation entrepreneurs across 12 countries. There's enough evidence now that business models are possible in sanitation. Some of the impact figures that you can see on the screen, are impact figures that we'll see multiply over the next years as we support more entrepreneurs and as the existing portfolio scales up. Within our portfolio, we are seeing a very strong growth within the portfolio, obviously on the back of a huge undersupply of sanitation services, of course, but also in geographies where there is favorable government policy framework for private sector to grow. We are seeing really handsome growth for the SMEs. Currently, the portfolio serves about 1.5 million people daily through sanitation services, through treatment, through waste to value kinds of models. Impact is at the heart of what TBC does. We measure impact every quarter. We do a survey with all our accelerators every quarter. We also ensure that, as they talk to investors, that the impact report is developed and the investors are able to see the impact of their investments. Next slide, please. You saw in the last slide, the map of India with all these colorful dots all across the length and breadth of India. Those are projects that these accelerators are executing, their project locations, service locations, etc. And we are thinking of the sanitation economy is around 4 thematic areas. They often coincide. There is the toilet economy, which is about providing access to sanitation, urban, rural. Then there's the circular sanitation economy, which is about treatment, and not just treatment, but also converting waste into valuable items. We just heard Joint Secretary Thara talk about how water and how compost can be upcycled back into the economy and not go waste. And then the orange circle is the smart economy, smart sanitation economy, where lots of business models looking at deploying sensors for real-time data, real-time decision-making, real-time information supply to various participants. And then, of course, menstrual hygiene is an important part of our portfolio. So this is the India portfolio. We continue to receive very strong pipeline from India, very strong indeed also for the smart sanitation. There's a vibrant ecosystem of smart sanitation developing in India, and smart sanitation, which can deliver really sanitation to the grassroots. And that's the wonderful thing that we are witnessing. We'll just have a quick video of the 2022 cohort, the India cohort for 2022. Shiba, over to you.
Yeah.
Shiba. Can you move to slide 4, please? The next slide, please. On the next slide, you'll see how TBC works. So we have basically 4 pillars. The first is the accelerator, the second investment, which Venu had quite explained it in detail in the earlier slides. The third pillar is the strategic projects, which actually provides a playground for sanitation businesses. These are structured projects that propel private sector participation. The fourth and the last pillar is the communications and the events. TBC every year publishes high quality research reports that are widely quoted by both the Government of India as well as other forums within the sanitation sector. For example, the India Market Estimates report of 2017, which talks about the $62 billion size of the market economy. We also organize national as well as the global level events like the Global Sanitation Summit in 2019 in Pune. Next slide, please. So we heard from Ms. Thara, and we also realized that recently launched on the SBM Urban and the AMRUT missions on 1st of October 2021, we see that most of our projects, strategic projects, primarily align very well with both these missions. And if you look at the size of the outlay that's been provided, $60 billion of both these missions. So you can imagine, the private sector participation, the boost it would give to, that's the kind of private sector participation with Ms. Thara was also talking about. Next slide, please. On the communications and the event side, we do interact with our partners as well as people from the sector through our website. We have a social media interaction via our LinkedIn. We have a PR agency like the agency that's covering today's event as well, called Edelman. And we also have roundtables, which we'll talk about in the next slide, please. So last week, we launched the first India Roundtable on the 11th of November. You can see the participants from participating companies that were part of this event. And we really welcome any private sector participant who would be interested to collaborate with TBC to join us in our next round, which is on the 9th of February. So thank you very much for patiently hearing me out. And without much further ado, let me hand over the floor to Venu. Venu, over to you.
Thanks, Sunil. We'll start the panel discussion in a moment. Right now, let me just, we'll have about the next 35-40 minutes for the panel discussion. We'll introduce the panelists in the first 5 to 7 minutes, a quick introduction, then we dive into the panel discussion. It's a unique mega panel, you can say, but the good thing is that we've got real actors on the panel today. Sanitation economy or access to sanitation or sanitation impact is at the heart of what they do every day. And therefore it's I think from all of them that we want to understand their differing perspectives. We have of course speakers from government, from private sector, SMEs, as well as large corporation, standards organizations that play a very important role for any sector. Also investors and donors, all have are supporting the acceleration of the sanitation economy, the acceleration of the SDG 6 goal from one way or the other. And as Joint Secretary Thara mentioned in her speech, I think it's the stage is set in India for all the actors to come together with a common actionable agenda. And I think that COVID in its own way has brought this kind of alignment to various actors as well. It's sort of combined the multiple stakeholders onto one table because hygiene, health and hygiene is at the center of everyone's strategy, whether it be the government or the private sector or investors or other organizations. I think two key things that I took away from Joint Secretary Thara's speech just a moment ago was the huge outlay for the AMRUT program. I think it's about $40 billion over the next 5-6 years. And I think she mentioned that 10% of that will directly result in PPP contracts, and I think that's a sizable sum. Another 30% of that, could be in projects where some kind of viability gap funding could be unlocked within the government structure. And in fact, the whole of $40 billion will ultimately go towards contracts and further percolate down into the private sector, whether they are civil contracts, whether they are, sewage treatment plant contracts, etc. So I think it's a great opportunity. It's a great compelling context. On the other side, we also see this kind of sobering report on the SDG 6, which says that, we are not on course to meet the SDG 6 target unless we really, really speed up, unless the pace picks up. I think we are in the right direction, but we do need to pick up pace. And that brings me to sort of importance of sanitation, importance of decentralized, innovative technologies in sanitation that can serve the sort of traditionally unserved communities within sanitation. So we look at all these questions. We'll talk to all the panelists and try and find out, what is the sort of common actionable agenda that can deliver the kind of results that we're hoping for. Let me ask the panelists to quickly introduce themselves, but before that, I'll request everyone to, if convenient, to switch on their videos, if possible. Thank you. I'll ask Dr. Sapna Poti to quickly introduce herself.
Hi, and thanks for this invite. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm Sapna. I'm from the Principal Scientific Advisor's Office. I lead the Strategic Alliances Division here. Been in the industry for about 12 to 15 years. Post which I've been with the government from 2013, Ministry of Skills, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and with the Principal Scientific Advisor now. My major role is to get industry to participate with academia, as well as the startup ecosystem for building solutions and scientific technologies for social impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sapna Poti. Next, I'll ask Niveda and Ulka, the entrepreneurs, to introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. This is Niveda. I'm the CEO and founder of TrashCon. And at TrashCon, we have created patented technologies to sort and recycle trash that would have otherwise gotten dumped on the streets or burnt anyways. Today, we are preventing close to 500 tons of waste from going into the landfills in almost 20 cities across 6 states, as well as exporting our technologies. Looking forward to the panel discussion today. Thank you.
Hi, this is Ulka here. I'm an executive director with Thara Plast, and I have worked with the toilet integration very closely, managed the operations and the production for tea. And we've been successfully running in about 4 cities right now. And one of our locations in Andaman gets almost about 500 visitors on a daily basis. So yes, that's what I do, clean toilets.
Excellent, thank you. Next, I'll go to Anandita and Sim.
Hi, I am Anandita. I am the leader for marketing for Sato, part of LIXIL for South Asia. Sato has been a flag bearer in providing affordable and hygienic sanitation solutions to the underserved community, especially in rural and peri-urban regions. We've been doing that in more than 44 countries across the globe. I think this is a great place to be because, we ourselves as a brand believe in creating a sanitation economy in every country we go, which would include customization of product, based on the needs, local material sourcing, manufacturing, and also skill training for local labor, for installation, and also just education and habit changing. So really looking forward to this panel discussion. Thank you.
And hi everyone, my name is Simran Gill and I'm the Global Brand Manager of Domestos and Unilever based out in London. It's an honor to be on the panel today and really looking forward to getting into some meaty discussion. I specifically look after all the sanitation initiatives that the brand works on. It's global, so we have significant operations in India through partnerships with UNICEF and the government of India as well as Southeast Asia, Africa, and Eastern Europe, specifically focusing on school sanitation as well. So keen to understand the economies of scale more in detail with you all, and importantly, unpick and unlock the opportunities that we have as a large FMCG business in terms of what more can we do in order to support a thriving economy moving forward. So looking forward to it.
Thanks, Sim. Let's go over to Bratin.
Hi, my name is Bratin. I am representing TÜV. TÜV is a German company based in Munich headquarters, and we are pretty much into certification, inspection, testing, as well as we are pretty much into technological intervention and due diligence, or especially we work with investors, we work with industry, we work with different sectors, pretty much engaged in government sector as well, related to a lot of policy intervention project. Personally, I am responsible for industry service as well as sustainability business for the region South Asia, Middle East, Africa, and ASEAN. In sanitation sector, we are pretty much involved, especially the two standard. I think all of us always hear on sanitation is ISO 30500 and 31800. So TÜV, we were part of many technical committee. We work pretty closely with Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation while developing the standard. Personally, this is the topic close to heart. I was also involved in development of this standard. So I'm pretty excited to be here and in next 45 minutes to listen others, and probably I can share some of my experience related to this standard development as well later. Thanks.
Thanks, Bratin. Good to have you. Srini, let's go over to you.
Hi, I am Shini. I am working in the USAID and looking after the water and sanitation program. So basically, we actually work with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. So we have a bilateral agreement with them. And so basically, we support the government in its flagship program, that is a sanitation program, AMRUT and SBM 2.0. And as USAID has a global private sector engagement policy, through which we promote the participation of private sector companies in water and sanitation program. So TBC is one of our partner in this activity. So we have other partners like Safe Water Network who also engage with the private sector in the water supply sector. So, so we feel that this is a very important activity where there is a major role for the private sector to come together to bridge this gap. That's our agenda. So thank you. Yep.
Thanks, Rini. And lastly, but not the least by any stretch of imagination, the two investors, Brandon and Sai.
Sure, I can start first. I'm Brandon Cheah from responsAbility. We are an impact investment manager based in Zurich, but we invest exclusively in developing markets. As for myself, I'm leading the WASH investments for responsAbility globally. We started looking at WASH about 2 years ago, in particularly for a fund that we called the Social Bond, which is a blended financing structure with SDG-focused investments that we have since rolled out in partnership with SIDA and Danske Bank. So yeah, keen to participate in the discussion.
Hi everyone, I'm Sai and I represent Caspian Debt here. At Caspian Debt, we provide debt capital to companies which are striving to create a positive social or environmental impact, and water and sanitation remains one of the key focus areas we work on. In about 7 years in our existence as a non-banking financial company, we have lent to close to 150 plus companies and disbursed close to 2,000 crore Indian rupees. At Caspian, I lead investments in the sectors of water and sanitation and financial inclusion. So look forward to providing our views on how to, about debt, and generally from the other panelists on how we can improve the engagement in the private sector.
Thanks, Sai. Let's get started with the discussion. My sort of first question to Dr. Sapna Poti, if I can. You work at the intersection, Dr. Poti, within the academia and the industry, and promoting innovations that can solve sanitation challenges. In your opinion, how can that process be accelerated, or that momentum be accelerated further?
Thanks. In fact, I think more than acceleration, we need to begin a lot of industry academia partnerships. While we have been working on this for past 2 years or so, and we have some very good multilateral as well as foundations working with us, be it USAID, Gates. We also have a bit of funding from Rockefeller Foundation and so on. But a lot needs to be done, and TBC, of course, is also our partner. But a lot needs to be done by the private sector, especially when it comes to innovations and focus on scientific solutions and technologies which will sanity. There are 3 major areas that I surely see that private industry should be funding, as well as supporting through their partnership. It could be through manufacturing, it could be mentoring the startups, or through pure funding, the CSR funds, or through the R&D funds. The first one would largely be on the design toilets. Toilet needs to be built in every home per se, and we are far from that target. And that target is not the one which government is supposed to get to. It is something that all of us need to work on. And so technology works a lot on this as well. You need to have better designs. And for every terrain, design is very different, be it for hills, or be it for the plains, or where the water is resources are less, and so on. So that itself is framework of designs are required. So that's one part. Second, technology, or space of technology is waste value, which also includes human waste being used for agriculture, organic manure for that matter, or you could use it for biogas. You could also use it for hydrogen gas and so on. So the conversion, and the waste value itself has several potential of technology and innovations that needs to be encouraged and scaled up. So that's a humongous task. It's not very easy, first of all, to evaluate the technologies, secondly, to build these technologies, and third, to do proof of concept and scale up. So industry needs to come much closer to the academia as well as researchers and the entire startup ecosystem to do this. And the third one would largely be related to the manual scavengers and how to make their life easy. So you have the whole host of robotics for sewage cleaning. You have what PatCat does, and so on. So there are there's Bandicoot, there is an IIT Madras startup at this juncture, but there are several of them which need to come up, and there needs to be a challenge which is thrown to this entire startup ecosystem and academia per se on different robotics for sewage cleaning, tanks cleaning, and so on. So the entire technology around that itself is something that industry needs to come up and undertake. Of course, there are organizations like Unilever, there are there's Gill, for instance, NTPC. Some of these are hardly any, to the population of about 25,000 industries that we have, which would be supported. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Poti. I think those are very good points. Manufacturing support, because we often see products that are post-prototype. How do they go from 10 products being produced a month to 10,000 products being produced a month? I think that's definitely a good point. Manufacturing, mentoring, and funding support. Let me go over to Niveda and ask her, Niveda, you heard from Dr. Poti and, how industry and academia can come together. Also from the government side, what kind of favorable policy mechanism are you looking for which can enable your next scale-up journey?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. And I'll just try to start by saying that for any company with any technological intervention in this field to actually work and do an impact, the one key player is government coming into the picture. So with TrashCons, so I'll just give a quick brief. We have developed technologies for segregating and recycling waste, solid waste, and we speak on behalf of all the startups that we know from the liquid waste. And what we have realized is, first speaking about the government, government does have schemes. They have millions of dollars spent on creating awareness and everything. But as Dr. Sapna rightly said, the evaluation, how do you evaluate a particular company, is something that is pending. Second, policies. Every state, every district has a different policy on how to treat their waste. There is no uniformity, which ensures that a player cannot enter how they entered Karnataka in any other state. So there is no uniform policy. Government decision makers don't even understand the field. They're not able to take informed decisions. Both the government and at central, at state level are dependent on consultants. And to be very frank, with blunt honesty, consultants take a commission from a company to provide them that solution. So we cannot rely blindly on the so-called consultants. The government should not ideally rely blindly on this, but this is what is happening on ground. So I would request, and the third part is, how do PPPs actually come into picture when companies such as TrashCon and many other companies are really scared to work with the government? Because again, with blunt honesty, putting it across, because I feel all the decision makers and players are here. We need to pay money to the government to get money from them. That is the kind of situation that is in India. Corruption is reality. And until that is not removed, startups and entrepreneurs are not incentivized, or private players are not incentivized to work with the government to solve the problem. There are more players going out of the field than coming in. I'm trying to give the right status here and not sugarcoat it, simply because I feel the solution can come out of it. So this is our understanding with the government, Mr. Venu. And if I may have time, even with investments or even with corporates, I mean, we have been greatly benefited with tie-ups from corporates like Unilever and Mondelez. But again, there is a lot more that needs to be done. To enable a company to start from ideation to prototype to actually developing the product. And there is very little funds in the first stage as compared to when the product is already developed. So these are the few things that I would leave with the discussion with. Yeah.
Thanks, Niveda. Blunt as ever, and I think those are good points. Government needs to understand, keep up pace with the technology innovation that's happening, and then design policies that are agile, and then those policies can keep up pace with innovation. Next, let's go to Ulka. Ulka, I wanted to touch on COVID a little bit. I know you're facing perhaps the similar policy challenges as Niveda outlined, but how have you seen, how has COVID impacted your growth or your business model scale up? Are there some positives there as well, or what are the new challenges there?
So during the COVID phase, we were impacted as any other business. It wasn't going really well for us. But, people have become more serious about hygiene and toilets and, separate toilet for women, men, separate, like crowd segregation. Others, earlier, it could be like 100 people to one toilet. Now they're aware, okay, maybe just, 15 people to one toilet. So those little things at government level have happened to the point that, we have set up a couple of COVID care units where we place more toilets. We've placed more toilets than the beds. So that way it has been positive. And even people's mindset about hygiene has increased, and they are looking for cleaner spaces. They are not okay with anything that operator or the public toilet was providing. So they have also become a lot smarter and more demanding, of course, because they will not go to a place if it's not clean and if it's, there's no crowd segregation there. They don't want a packed place. So that way it has kind of impacted us positively. Again, so like adding to what Niveda was saying, it just, all we are waiting for is now the government to make it a policy that, let the private sector operate in this space and give them the necessary licenses or permissions. So you don't have to kind of, like she said, every state has different, every local body has a different mandate. So people are ready for it. The operators are ready for it. The funders are ready for it. It's just the bottleneck at that side, and we're just waiting. I mean, it's a scalable model. Of course, last couple, even through the COVID phase, we have kind of cleared all those doubts of, whether people will advertise on it. Yes, they will. Even during COVID phase, we had advertising for the public good, the public messages, whether it was washing your hands or getting vaccinated. So the advertisements were coming in, whether people wanted to use toilets. Yes, they wanted to use. So all those doubts which were initially there are cleared. It's a scalable model. It's doable. It's profitable, everything. We just need a clear mandate and a policy from the government for this.
Yeah. And I think that I would even say that COVID has brought the necessary government attention. But yes, as you rightly point out, I think that attention needs to get translated into clear enabling policies, that can directly help you. Wonderful. Staying on COVID, I'll probably go to Sim next. Sim, what do you think? Unilever is a large company. What have been the business implications for COVID, and how do you see the road ahead from a COVID lens, from your business lens under the COVID scenario? Sure.
COVID's impacted everyone, whether it's SMEs or whether it's large corporates like ourselves. It has been it's been non-discriminatory in regards to the impact that it can have, certainly. And we are very cognizant of that and ultimately how it's shaped the business moving forward, particularly within the home care segment where we focus on wash a little bit. And primarily, of course, we deal with consumers. That is our area of focus, and that is every single person in the world is a consumer. Seen ultimately is that there has been a shift in the hygiene awareness on that baseline is significantly higher than it was before. Needless to say, however, and of course that has provided a great platform. I suppose the conversation ultimately that we're having today perhaps wouldn't be as pointed and perhaps as sharp if it wasn't for COVID in terms of laying the groundwork and enabling us to feel that, okay, hygiene is and should be, in coordination with sanitation, has to be higher on the agenda. But unfortunately, what we have not yet seen is that increase in prioritization that we were hoping for. I think a lot of the roadmaps towards SDG 6 have already been set in place since the formation of those, of it. But nevertheless, we are actually beginning to, what we've seen so far is that post-pandemic, that's access to equitable and safe sanitation is in fact decreasing. So, perspective of even other public institutions such as schools, for instance, you saw that the situation was in 2016 where we had 66% access to toilets. It's now dropped down to 63%. And that in itself just shows that, okay, perhaps, yes, we all understand where the prioritization needs to be, but the prioritization isn't yet quite there. And in spite of the fact that COVID were increasing, and as Olga quite adequately mentioned, that people want change and they want better access to such facilities, unfortunately, that in itself, the acceleration is not quite there yet. So I think that's what we're also seeing within Unilever, that in fact, okay, the will is there, but where do you put the money? Where do you facilitate it in the right place, in the right spaces to really make that difference? And we understand, and we're very empathetic towards the situation that a lot of governments and also other businesses are feeling. We're dealing with high inflation post-COVID, and therefore there is also a multitude of other issues. So how do you ensure that sanitation is and should be prioritized in the same vein and in the same breadth? And I think it's a fine line, because also the pandemic has done two things. Yes, hygiene awareness is extremely high. That's clear, but there's also fatigue. So you have to utilize the right energies in the right spaces to be able to make that long-term beneficial change that we're looking for. And it is a case of working with the right actors and looking really for multilateral solutions that provide scale. And I think that's important. We can enable an environment for more entrepreneurial businesses, smaller entrepreneurial businesses, to create that competition that we need within the environment. But certainly at the top-down approach, there needs to be a greater understanding as to how we can have a move across from the sort of bilateral partnerships that we're quite familiar with, one organization working with another, and then we work in our silos, but more so, can we try and play on all the other opportunities that we have here to be able to find long-term solutions? So for example, Unilever, we are experts in behavior change. We speak to billions of consumers every single day. Allow us to focus on that. Give us the means and the opportunity to be able to speak to as many people as possible in the simplistic manner that we are able to do. We're not saying that we are experts in toilet building. We're not. There's certainly other organizations here that are far more qualified to be able to do that. But then allow us to help in the communications or in the operation and maintenance of the school toilets. Let's look for solutions together and enable that environment better. And also that will allow and help the government to be able to make those right, create the right environment for us to be able to work in from a policy perspective as well. So yeah, it ebbs and flows, and there's lots of different ways that we can, I think, working together and catalyzing the right initiatives is the way we're going to be able to make that work.
Thanks, Sim. No, I think the good news, like you mentioned, is that the baseline has moved up on hygiene awareness. And I think that itself opens up a lot of the economic activity, a lot of, hygiene products and services. That latent demand sort of gets translated better. But I think on your point about partnerships, that the road ahead will require multilateral partnerships, everyone coming together. It's not something that one player can do on themselves or two players can do on themselves. On the issue of partnerships, I'd like to go to Anandita and ask her, how is it that we see within our accelerator program, large companies like yourselves and Unilever and Kimberly-Clark work with SMEs, day in, day out. SMEs bring a lot of innovation, but, you bring that thinking about scale, which is also essential. So in your opinion, how can that activity increase the partnerships between large companies and SMEs? And, what are these sort of win-win partnerships there that you're seeing?
So, I just want to kind of set a context here, because I know we're lots of like big and SMEs, but just to give an idea, right? Currently in India, 6.11% of the manufacturing GDP and 24.63% of the service sector GDP is credited to the SMEs. So, and nearly 45% of the total Indian manufacturing is accounted for by SMEs. So there is obviously scale there already. What they need is the kind of support, like you said, that skill development. And I feel that it has to start from a conversation. But some of the things which we have to keep in mind is that we need to engage with them on an on-ground support, to support bettering their capability building. So I think that kind of comes in from the earlier conversation of like, there is the prototype is there, that scalability. So definitely there needs to be that transactional, communication there. I think one of the most important is the alignment of the sustainable goals from the SMEs and the large corporates. So one of the things which is happening is that, we large corporates understand the scalability, they understand that, but they have their own sustainable goals. So there is that importance for the SMEs to come together and, work. And if you can find the right large corporate, that would really help with the collaboration. Also, in the same tone, the identification of the market needs. What I mean by that is that, is a large corporate looking at the market needs the same with the SMEs? So I think that collaboration, because SMEs are the people, who are working on the ground. What I mean by that is that, they understand the little small, the small changes, the small shift in market, whereas a large scale corporation, it might take a little bit, I wouldn't say longer, but it might not be as agile. So I think that's something which definitely an SME brings, and that could be something which we can work on together. Just going back to the first point, there is the need to maximize the spillover of management and knowledge sharing, from the multinational to the local SMEs. And also, I think one of the most essential bits is for the both of them to come together to support the policy framework. So going back to the government, there is that policy framework. A large corporate might be able to put a little bit more, like they can do that leg work there. They can kind of push for that policy framework because they do have that channels. But the SME support is required in actually making that actionable. So I do feel that these kind of things would really work if we encourage SMEs, and also it'll kind of put the SMEs to understand that there is a lot of two-way conversation which needs to happen, and once that happens, that we can see a change. Those are just a couple of things which I feel would help moving ahead.
Wonderful points, Anandita. And I think your point about scalability and then alignment of the sustainability goals, as well as large corporates have a lot of influence on policy. Educating on policy, making awareness, making the government aware of policy, of innovations. I think that's something that Niveda and Ulka both highlighted, that that's something that's needed for the government to learn about, to be updated on the set of innovations. Let me go to Bratin next. Bratin, you've been hearing about partnerships. Sim said that we need multilateral partnerships, multiple players coming to the same platform. Anandita mentioned about how that can lead to policy, sort of informing the policy, but also grounded in impact through sustainability. What are your views on how standards can be accelerated in this sector so that a common language can develop for all these partners as they talk more?
Yeah, I think you asked this question when in a very right time. What started by Dr. Poti and then Niveda, and also now Simran, Anandita and other, I think that's where standard plays a role. I mean, it removes certain interpretation scope, it's removed certain unambiguity, it brings everybody uniform. So that's why I think that if there is a proper standard, a lot of ambiguity, a lot of doubts can be removed, because then investor can trust, SMEs can work, government can trust. It brings a trust factor. Now, particularly to this sector, this sanitation sector, because we are working with standard organization or ISO since last 100 years. But why I think, or we think, that it's very important to focus standardization in sanitation sector also, basically for 4 key reasons. I mean, few things we have already discussed. One, this sector is unorganized. There are a lot of unorganized part of this sector. Second is this managed pretty much in a traditional way. So the focus on operation maintenance is low. Probably no concept of operation maintenance in many cases. I think Simran highlighted this point of operation maintenance. A lot of wastage of resource, physical resource, talent, all resource. There are a lot of wastage of resource in this sector. Third, I think we all must admit that there is a high risk of actual contamination. You call health, you call groundwater, you call environment. So that's the third issue. And the fourth, competency level vary too much. I mean, there are big players, there are startups, there are some NGOs are working down the level pretty good work, but the competency vary. So when you have this kind of variable, then you need something to bind everybody, and their standard come. And working with these 2 standards of 30500 and then 31800, when we are working with ISO and technical committee, it was very clear that we need to focus on 3 or 4 areas. One is performance and operation maintenance, often ignored in this sector. Second is how to protect health and environment for the consumer as well as for the people who are working there. Often we forget that. And second is, and third is that how we can integrate everything, starting from generation, collection, use, and the end use. And that's why in 31800, you will also see that other than performance, there are a lot of focus on energy, operation maintenance, and all this stuff. So with this standard, I think we are in much better position to achieve our goal. One is how to integrate everybody, supplier, vendor, manufacturer, SMEs, policy, regulator. Second, we always believe that any policy intervention is not possible if it is inclusive, and the standard can bring the inclusiveness. and it's also helped to focus on health sector. So I think if we can achieve this goal, and there are various guidelines, WHO has many guidelines, but these two ISO standard also bring to some extent an uniformity. So that's my take, and I think that everybody should encourage to go. I mean, it's not necessary to be certified or something, but at least if somebody follows this standard, I think a lot of our doubts and things can get clear.
Thanks, Bratin, and I think first also congratulations on joining TBC India. We look forward to doing a lot of work in this space next year with you. It's a very important piece. Even we realized, I mean, we took out the TBC star guidelines, which are a set of parameters and self-audit checks on how to operate and maintain a toilet. And I think that kind of work can connect very easily in defining standards on the toilet front, also on the treatment front, like Joint Secretary Thara said. So thank you so much. I'll go over to the investors. I've sort of saved them for the last. We have Srini from USAID, Brandon from responsAbility, and Sai from Caspian. We are seeing investment activity pick up in sanitation. I mean, I've myself witnessed in 2018, the investment activity was very donor focused, and now we see that commercial investors, and I would compliment both responsAbility and Caspian for taking the lead in making sanitation investments, and we are seeing a growing momentum. Let me go to Srini first. Srini, what makes this sector investable for you, and not just the sectors but also the subsectors?
Okay, thank you. Actually, yeah, as the Joint Secretary rightly mentioned, it's a new challenge. So we have in India, we see that only 30% of the wastewater is currently collected and treated. Remaining 70% is untreated, which is resulting in a huge pollution of the water. So, and so the government is now, as you rightly said, in the last few years, we are seeing they are very provocative, and we are seeing a lot of opportunities for the private sector engagement by the government to address this issue. For example, what we are seeing in the Clean Ganga program, to begin with the policy issues, I would say that water and sanitation is the state subject. So it changes with the state. So we cannot blame anyone. So it's a state prerogative. So state has its own right to arrive at the water and sanitation policy. Under actually gives a broad policy. For example, in the fecal sludge management, USAID along with the Gates Foundation came out with the national fecal sludge management policy. And based upon the broad policy, many state governments have their own policies, and then they have created their own budgets. And also they have engaged many private companies. And in last 3 years, I have
Okay, let's go over to
440 FSTPs, fecal sludge TPs constructed with the private companies. And we are seeing that a lot of private sector engagement happening due to the policy, and also in the Clean Ganga program, they have introduced the HAM model, that is hybrid annuity model, where we are seeing the private companies, they take a 10 or 20 years management contract, and then and so the 10-15 years they are operating and managing the FSTPs, and then they are handing over to the local ULBs. So we see a lot of enthusiasm among the private sector over a period of time. And also I think Sai, our partner Caspian, will speak more about the loan guarantee program. So USAID also launched a loan guarantee program to encourage the private sectors. But we see very less response. Most of the private companies, they are looking for government as grants or a foundation for grants, or so they are not looking after the loans or credits or something. They don't want to take that much risk. So we encourage the private companies to take credits and from our financial institutes, and then to participate more in the sector, because there is a large gap that should be fulfilled. That's my viewpoint. Over. Thank you.
Thanks, Rini. I'll go to Brandon next. Brandon, how can sanitation attract large capital? We've seen the first sort of investment activity and we've seen the momentum grow, but what needs to be in place for sanitation to really attract, large institutionalized capital of the kind that's needed for us to achieve the goals?
Thanks, Vinu, for the question. I think there's probably no single solution, but I think more communication flow here will help between the sector and the investor community. And here, I think that TBC has done an amazing job in bridging the gap between, again, the investors and the sanitation sector. Well, many investors we find is that they are not aware that sanitation is a sector that can be invested in. And a little unfortunate that we need COVID to sort of jolt us into placing more importance in hygienes and sanitation. Second point I'd like to touch on is the track record. I think that the question from commercial investors will always be of risk-adjusted returns. And that is just not possible to really determine because it's generally still an early stage industry. But that doesn't mean that the sanitation industry is inherently risky. I think it's just that more effort need to be put in at the diligence process, in understanding the key risks here that we are facing. And then many of the businesses within the sector, have different business models. And I think these businesses require different assessment methodology as well. So I think there's no one size fits all sort of way to assess the companies. But I genuinely believe that, there are available funding out there and also impact investors who want to invest in the sector, social impact businesses in general. But I think the critical point here is how could this be directed to the sanitation sector? At the very least, the companies have to demonstrate that it's ready to take in capital, be it grant, equity, mezzanine, debt. I think that would be key. I don't have the full answers, but we want to work together with the community. We have a shared interest to have a robust sanitation and water industry as well.
I think it's also a question of familiarity, I guess. As investors and SMEs start talking, start transacting, both understand each other well, and I'm glad to see that process already started and it's growing well. Let me go to Sai next. Sai, what do you need for more investments to happen? I mean, we've got a really, really nice pipeline of sanitation entrepreneurs here in India. We've got corporates who are looking to partner with SMEs. Partnerships are forming. There is a sort of ask on the policy framework side that an enabling policy needs to be in place. What else do you think is needed for investment flow to sort of debottleneck into the sanitation economy?
Thanks, Venu. And I think my answer would be more in terms of trying to tie up whatever transpired, starting with the joint secretary and ending with what Brandon has just said. So like say our general observation is also that this is more, I would treat this as a sunrise sector. So probably in the last 5 to 6 years is when the people started to openly talk about water and sanitation being a serious activity to be taken care of. And like Brandon mentioned, trying to, as investors, we are also trying to see whether business viability is something which is, can be proven. And as part of your accelerator, you have identified companies which does that. But at scale, is it something which is there across the different subsectors, whether it is public toilets or commercial sewage treatment plants or drinking water or solid waste management, etc. So across the different subsectors, it's something, which we are waiting to see. And because this is more of a sunrise sector also, the kind of entrepreneurs who are rising up to the challenge, I'll say that they are more of first generation entrepreneurs. So what it means is that whether equity investors are able to bring in the patient capital to support these kind of entrepreneurs. So the balance sheet right now is quite light, I would say, in terms of the equity capital which is there. So as debt providers, once the equity capital is also there, the viability is proven, I'm sure that we will be able to pitch in so that the capital can be leveraged to grow the business much better over there. But what also remains a factor, and which Niveda has spoken quite clearly, is trying to understand, see, this is still considered as a public good by most of the customers who are using these services, right? So government will be a key stakeholder in this and key customer to be able to, start this ball rolling. But if the government is going to take care of trying to make payments on time, which to a certain extent at a ULB level is being driven by the Swachh Bharat rankings, which was launched very recently. There are incentives tied up with SBM rankings. The Finance Commission, as I understand, also has some sort of a sanitation related scores for the state governments to get from that central kitty as well. So there is some amount of accountability which is definitely being driven for the ULBs at a municipality level to make sure that the companies they are working with are paid on time. But if that is probably taken care of, investors like responsAbility and Caspian, we are ready to shoulder responsibility to then evaluate business models, right? So that's something. And like Srini mentioned, USAID is a key partner where we have a risk sharing agreement, knowing that this is a sector which is completely yet to develop. So along with USAID, we are ready to commit close to $10 million US dollars of funding by 2028. So there's still time to go, but knowing these challenges which I just mentioned, we think that's the time it's going to take for us to be able to deploy these sort of capital into the ecosystem.
Thanks, Sai. Thanks. I think looking at the time, perhaps we bring this discussion to a close. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful discussion. Like I said earlier, all of you are actors in this space. Sanitation is your everyday job, and that reflects in your comments. The three sort of words for me from this panel have been, partnerships, multilateral partnerships, how we can get more people on the table talking, two-way communication, like Anandita said. And then policy frameworks, how to get the government to be aware of technological innovation, to keep pace with it, and draft policies that can enable their scale up. And then ultimately standards. I think that's an often overlooked piece, but very important one, because standard provides the sort of common language for all the players to talk within the sector. And I think if we can get the policy, the partnerships, and the standards in place, we have Srini and Brandon and Sai, the investors waiting at the doors. We are, as Sunil mentioned, on 11th of November, we launched our India Roundtable, the inaugural India Roundtable. We will continue that conversation. The next roundtable is on the 9th of February. As you saw, we have 5 India cohort in 2022 across smart sanitation, waste treatment, access to sanitation, toilets. And we also are working on, 2 strategic projects, which will unlock scale up in treatment as well as on the public toilet, community toilet side. And we hope to build on these conversations through the roundtable framework of ours in India. And so please keep in touch with us, and we'll certainly keep you updated of the conversation. With this, I'll thank all of you, heartfelt gratitude for taking the time out. This is usually if not a busy season, then this is the post-busy season, so really appreciate you taking the time out. With this, I'll pass on to Rajiv. Rajiv, if you can briefly introduce yourself and provide the closing remarks.
Thanks, Venu. I'm Rajiv Kher. I wear two hats. One is that right now I'm here as the independent director for the toilet board, and I also am the founder of Saraplast. And Saraplast is one of the pioneers in India to have equity investment as well as debt from responsAbility, from Avishkar, and a couple of other venture capital funds as well. And we are one of the pioneers for sanitation and scaling up sanitation in India. So I on behalf of the toilet board and also on the entrepreneur side, have been quite actively involved over the last 20 plus years in this particular space. And thank you very much, everyone, for very encouraging remarks and a lot of data for us to work on at the toilet board. Although the SDG 6 goals have not been 100% achieved, but I believe that to a large extent, with the kind of work that we're putting in by way of the entrepreneurs coming forward, I think it needs to be doubled, maybe even tripled, for us to really achieve those goals. And we need solutions which are rapidly deployable, which are cost effective and also sustainable. I think the entire discussion today involved the entrepreneurs talking about their woes and worries, the incidents of requirement of sanitation and standards, as well as policy, which is the main area which needs thrust, because if you don't have policy, you don't have the standards, automatically the investors are going to be wary about putting in money, because that's not going to give them the scale. So I think considering all these issues and the main gist of what we discussed today, I think a uniform policy for businesses is one of the key areas which has come out of this entire discussion. I think we need to not only have consultants, I think consultants do a great job as well, but I think in addition to that, we need practitioners who have been in this space, who have achieved something, to be a part of the association or part of a group that we can probably put together, maybe along with a USAID as who's already involved in the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan as a partner with government, to come out with these standards and policies which have been already discussed, let's say with the TUV, and look at standards which have been created in the West. The West has already standards for sanitation, for portable sanitation, for disposal of waste. Let's take those standards, maybe TUV already has them, put them together, look at a uniform policy code. And I think automatically all these things of corruption and issues which are very typical of what entrepreneurs already are grappling with will be diminished, will be relieved. And I believe that this would be the phase or the next step forward for the enterprises as well as the investors to get comfortable to look at investing into these entities. I think the toilet board and the cohorts that we have, as well as the program that we've put forward for all these people to come together, I think Venu and team are doing an excellent job putting things together and giving you guys this entire platform for you to actually look at the overall situation in just 1 hour to see what the sanitation business and the circular economy is. So I believe that going forward, we will have more interactions. I believe there will be more scalability, viability in the business. And as somebody mentioned about the sunrise, like Sai mentioned about the sunrise sector, I believe this is the sunrise sector. And like I always say, like the IT business was maybe 30 or 40 years ago, the SHIT business is going to be even larger. So on that note, let me thank you very much for being a part of the discussion, and thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. We call it the close now. Thank you.
Yeah, Sahil, I shall play the video for one last time.
Yep, please do.
Thanks.